Welcome, traveler, to a place where the sun paints the land in hues of gold and amber. We find ourselves in the heart of the Sonoran Desert, a vast expanse of warmth and quiet beauty. Take a deep breath. Can you feel it? The air here is different. It carries a sense of timelessness, a whisper of stories etched into the very earth beneath our feet. This isn't just a desert. It's a living, breathing landscape, a canvas of subtle colors and resilient life. Look around. The gentle rise and fall of the terrain creates a soft rhythm, a calming cadence that has drawn people here for centuries. The sky above is a brilliant, endless blue, a stark contrast to the ochre and sage of the ground below. It's a place that demands you slow down, to listen not with your ears, but with your entire being. Here, silence isn't an absence of sound, but a language of its own. It speaks through the gentle rustle of the desert wind as it weaves its way through the thorny branches of mesquite and palo verde trees. It's a sound that has been the constant companion to generations of desert dwellers. The mesquite, with its gnarled, twisted limbs, seems to hold the wisdom of ages, its leaves whispering secrets only the wind can understand. Listen closely, and you might hear the scurry of a lizard darting across the sun-baked soil, or the distant cry of a hawk circling high overhead, its sharp eyes scanning the vast plains. This is a land of subtle movements and quiet dramas, where every rustle and every shadow tells a story of survival and adaptation. The silence invites contemplation, a chance to connect with something ancient and profound. As our eyes adjust to the bright, warm light, a form begins to emerge from the horizon. It rises from the flat plain like a mirage, a structure that seems both born of the earth and yet distinctly man-made. This is the silhouette of Casa Grande, the great house. Its earthen walls, weathered by centuries of sun and wind, stand as a sentinel in this expansive landscape. Seeing it for the first time, even from a distance, is a humbling experience. It's a stark reminder that we are treading on hallowed ground, a place where history is not confined to books, but is a tangible presence all around us. The structure seems to anchor the entire desert, a focal point of human endeavor in a world often perceived as empty. It pulls you in, beckoning you to come closer and unravel the mysteries it holds. We are stepping into a world shaped not by brute force, but by ancient ingenuity, patience, and a deep, respectful understanding of the natural world. This is the legacy of the Hohokam, a people who thrived in this seemingly harsh environment for over 1,000 years. They didn't just survive here, they flourished. They built a society, a culture, and a home in the heart of the Sonoran Desert. The story of Casa Grande is the story of their remarkable achievements. It's a tale of how they harnessed the power of the desert, transforming its challenges into opportunities. As we walk this land, we are walking in the footsteps of masters of desert living, people who saw this arid landscape not as an obstacle, but as a partner. Their legacy is written in the soil, in the canals they dug, and in the enduring walls of the great house. The Hohokam were true pioneers of desert engineering. Their accomplishments are nothing short of astonishing, especially when you consider the tools and technology available to them. They were farmers, astronomers, artists, and builders. Long before modern irrigation systems, they created an extensive network of canals, some stretching for miles, to bring water from the Gila River to their crops. This wasn't just digging ditches. It was a sophisticated system that required precise planning, incredible labor, and a communal effort that spanned generations. They understood the subtle gradients of the land, the flow of water, and the cycles of the seasons. This mastery allowed them to cultivate corn, beans, squash, and cotton in the middle of the desert, supporting a large and vibrant population. The remnants of these canals, some still visible today, are a testament to their genius. And at the center of it all stands Casa Grande. But what was it? A home? A temple? An astronomical observatory? The truth is, we don't know for sure, and that's part of its enduring mystery. Archaeologists believe it was likely a place of great significance, a central gathering point for surrounding communities. Its unique four-story construction, using a building material called caliche, a kind of natural concrete found in the desert soil, was a monumental feat. The walls are thick, providing insulation from the extreme desert temperatures, keeping the interior cool in the summer and warm in the winter. Think about the coordination and knowledge required to build such a structure without modern equipment. It was a community project on a massive scale, a symbol of their collective identity and spiritual beliefs. The very alignment of the building suggests a purpose beyond simple shelter. Certain windows and openings align perfectly with the sun and moon at specific times of the year, like the solstices and This indicates that the Hohokam were keen observers of the sky. Casa Grande may have been a giant celestial calendar, helping them track the seasons for planting and harvesting, and marking important ceremonial dates. Imagine standing within these walls during a solstice, watching a beam of light slice through a perfectly placed window to illuminate a specific spot on the floor. It connects the heavens to the earth, the spiritual to the practical. This wasn't just architecture, it was a way of living in harmony with the cosmos, of integrating their daily lives with the grand cycles of the universe. As we get closer, the scale of the structure becomes even more impressive. The walls seem to rise directly from the desert floor, their texture and color a perfect match for the surrounding landscape. It feels organic, as if it grew here rather than being built. This is the essence of Hohokam ingenuity, working with the environment, not against it. They used the materials at hand, understood the climate, and built something that has endured for nearly 700 years. The great house has withstood scorching sun, monsoon storms, and the relentless passage of time. It stands today as a powerful monument to the resilience and resourcefulness of the people who conceived it. It challenges our modern notions of progress and reminds us that sustainable living is not a new concept, but an ancient practice. This journey into the world of the Hohokam is more than just a history lesson. It's an exploration of human potential. It's about understanding how a culture can thrive by adapting to its environment with wisdom and respect. The story of Casa Grande is a source of inspiration, showing us what can be achieved with patience, community, and a deep connection to the land. It's a reminder that the desert, often seen as a barren wasteland, is actually a place of incredible life and profound lessons. It teaches us about sustainability, about the importance of water, and about the enduring power of human creativity. So, join us as we step across the threshold of this ancient world. Let the silence of the desert envelop you, and let the spirit of this remarkable place speak to you. In the chapters to come, we will explore the intricate details of the great house, delve deeper into the lives of the Hohokam people, and uncover the secrets of their incredible canal systems. We'll examine the artifacts they left behind and piece together the story of their eventual disappearance, a mystery that still puzzles historians today. This is just the beginning of our quiet arrival. The true journey has just begun. The desert has welcomed us, and the walls of Casa Grande are waiting to share their stories. Thank you for joining us on this adventure. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the next chapter in this incredible story. We have so much more to discover together. Welcome back to our journey through the ancient world. Today, we're diving into Chapter 2, where we meet the Hohokam, the true masters of the desert. Imagine a people so ingenious, so in tune with their environment. But they not only survived but thrived in one of the world's most challenging landscapes, the Sonoran Desert. For nearly 1,500 years, from around the year 1 to 1450. The Hohokam called this arid land home. They weren't nomadic wanderers. They were settled, peaceful agricultural innovators who completely transformed the desert floor. Their story is one of incredible resilience and brilliant engineering. The name Hohokam comes from the Hohokam language, meaning those who have gone or the finished ones, a fitting tribute to a civilization that left an indelible mark on the land. While their neighbors, the ancestral Pueblones, were known for their cliff dwellings, the Hohokam were famous for something else entirely: their mastery of water. They built one of the most extensive and sophisticated irrigation systems in the pre-Columbian Americas. This wasn't just a few simple ditches. It was a sprawling network of canals, some stretching for miles, intricately designed to capture and distribute the precious water from the Gila and Salt rivers. Think about the scale of this achievement. Using nothing more than stone tools and woven baskets, thousands of people worked together, generation after generation, to dig these massive canals. Some were over 10 feet deep and 30 feet wide. This system allowed them to turn the dry, sun-baked earth into fertile farmland, a vibrant green ribbon cutting through the dusty brown of the desert. They grew crops that were perfectly adapted to the hot climate, like corn, beans, squash, cotton, and agave. This reliable food source was the foundation of their society. It allowed them to build steady, long-lasting communities and freed up time for other pursuits, like art, trade, and ceremony. Their settlements weren't grand stone cities, but rather collections of individual homes, known as pit houses. These were clever structures, built partially underground to stay cool in the brutal summer heat and warm during the cooler desert nights. Over time, these villages grew, sometimes housing hundreds or even thousands of people. You can picture it. Communities bustling with life along the riverbanks, children playing, artisans crafting beautiful pottery and shell jewelry, and farmers tending to their fields, all sustained by the life-giving water flowing through their hand-dug canals. This ability to control water didn't just feed them, it shaped their entire world. The canals became the arteries of their civilization, connecting villages and fostering a shared sense of identity. The communal effort required to build and maintain the irrigation system would have required a high degree of social organization and cooperation. They were a society built on teamwork, a shared vision, and a deep understanding of their environment. They knew the rhythms of the rivers, the patterns of the seasons, and how to harness nature's power without destroying it. As their society flourished, so did their culture. The Hohokam were skilled artisans. Archaeologists have found beautiful pottery, often decorated with a distinctive redone buff design featuring geometric patterns and stylized animals. They were also masters of shellcraft, importing shells from the Gulf of California, hundreds of miles away, and etching them with intricate designs using a weak acid likely made from fermented cactus fruit, a form of early acid etching. This tells us they were part of a vast trade network that connected them to peoples all across the Southwest and into modern-day Mexico. Their spiritual life was rich as well. They built large, oval-shaped fields that are believed to be ball courts, similar to those found in Mesoamerica. This suggests a cultural exchange and the possibility of ceremonial games playing a significant role in their social and religious life. They also built large earthen mounds, sometimes with structures on top, which likely served as platforms for important buildings or ceremonial centers, overlooking their villages and fields. These were the focal points of community life, where people gathered for rituals, celebrations, and important social events. The story of the Hohokam is the story of human ingenuity in the face of adversity. They didn't just adapt to the desert, they reshaped it to meet their needs, creating a sustainable way of life that lasted for centuries. They were farmers, engineers, artists, and traders who built a complex and vibrant society from the ground up, all powered by their incredible understanding of water. Their legacy isn't written in towering stone monuments, but in the faint outlines of ancient canals that still crisscross the Phoenix Basin today, a subtle but powerful reminder of a people who made the desert bloom. So as we explore their world, remember that the Hohokam were not just desert dwellers. They were pioneers of irrigation, builders of communities, and keepers of a culture that thrived for over a millennium. Their story is a powerful testament to the enduring human spirit and our ability to create a home in even the most unlikely of places. Join us next time as we take a closer look at the marvel of their canal systems and the engineering genius that made it all possible. Thanks for watching, and if you're enjoying this journey into the past, be sure to like and subscribe for more. Welcome back to our journey through the history of the Hohokam and the magnificent Casa Grande. In our last chapter, we explored the vast canal network that brought life to this arid land. Today, in Chapter 3, we're digging deep into the very earth itself to uncover the secrets of the materials that gave this great house its strength and endurance. We're talking about the land of Caliche and clay. So, what exactly is Caliche? If you've ever tried to dig a hole in the Sonoran Desert, you've probably encountered it. Caliche is a remarkable natural substance, a sort of desert-born concrete. It's a layer of soil where calcium carbonate, the same stuff that makes up seashells and limestone, binds sand, gravel, and clay together. Over thousands of years, rainwater seeps into the soil, dissolves these minerals, and then as the intense desert sun evaporates the water, the minerals are left behind, cementing the soil into a rock-hard layer just beneath the surface. It's incredibly dense, almost like a natural pavement. Hidden underground, for early farmers, it was a nuisance, a stubborn barrier to planting crops. But for the Hohokam architects, this challenging material was a gift. They saw not an obstacle, but a quarry. The Hohokam people were masters of using what their environment provided. They didn't have modern machinery or explosives to break through this tough layer. Instead, they used immense effort and ingenuity. They would have used fire and water to weaken the caliche. By building a hot fire on top of the ground, they heated the caliche layer. Then, they would douse it with water, causing the sudden temperature change to crack and fracture the rock-hard material. It's a technique known as fire setting, used by ancient miners all over the world. Once fractured, they could pry it out of the ground using heavy wooden digging sticks and stone tools. It was backbreaking, painstaking work, requiring a huge amount of communal labor. They would quarry out massive quantities of this material, chunk by chunk, to prepare for the next stage of construction. Once they had a stockpile of raw caliche, the real architectural magic began. The process was brilliant in its simplicity. They would break down the larger chunks and mix the caliche gravel and powder with water. This wasn't just any water. It was the precious water brought in by their extensive canal systems. They would also add a binding agent, likely clay soil, to create a thick, mortar-like mixture. Think of it like a prehistoric recipe for concrete. The consistency had to be just right, not too wet, not too dry to be able to be packed and shaped, yet strong enough to hold its form. This mixture was the lifeblood of their construction, the very substance from which the walls of the great house would rise. The construction method itself was a marvel of patience and engineering. It's a technique we now call puddled adobe or coursed caliche. They didn't use molds or forms like modern concrete workers. Instead, they built the walls layer by layer, or course by course. They would lay down a thick, wet layer of the caliche mixture, about 2 feet high, directly on the prepared foundation. Then, using their hands and possibly smooth stones or wooden paddles, they would pack it down, smooth it out, and shape it into a section of wall. The key was to let this course air dry and harden in the sun. It might take days or even weeks for one layer to cure enough to support the weight of the next. Imagine the scene. A community of workers moving in a coordinated rhythm, hauling buckets of the caliche mud, packing it into place, their hands covered in the pale, earthy mixture. Once a layer was sufficiently hard, they would begin the next course on top of it. They would wet the surface of the hardened layer to ensure a strong bond with the new wet layer above. This methodical layer-by-layer process continued, slowly but surely, as the walls of the Casa Grande climbed higher and higher, reaching for the desert sky. You can still see these distinct layers, these horizontal lines, on the walls of the Casa Grande today. They are like the growth rings of a tree, each one telling a story of a season of labor and construction. These walls were incredibly thick, especially at the base, up to 4 feet thick in some places. This wasn't just for stability, it was also for insulation. The massive caliche walls acted as a thermal battery. They would slowly absorb the intense heat of the desert sun during the day, keeping the interior rooms surprisingly cool. Then, as the desert night brought a chill to the air, the walls would slowly radiate that stored heat back into the building, keeping the inside comfortable. It was a passive, sustainable form of climate control, perfected hundreds of years before modern air conditioning was even a dream. The caliche wasn't just a building block, it was a sophisticated technology for living comfortably in a harsh environment. Now, clay played its own crucial role. While caliche provided the bulk and strength, the Hohokam also dug clay from the banks of the Gila River. This river clay was finer and more pliable. They used it to create a smoother plaster, which they applied as a final finish to the rougher caliche walls, both inside and out. This plaster wasn't just for looks, though it did give the walls a more refined, even beautiful, appearance. It also helped to seal the walls, protecting the caliche core from the erosive power of wind and the rare but powerful desert rainstorms. Over the centuries, much of this outer plaster is worn away, but in protected corners of the Casa Grande, you can still find traces of this smooth, ancient finish, a testament to the Hohokam's attention to detail. The floors and roofs were also a product of the local landscape. The main support beams for the upper floors and the roof were massive timbers, likely pine or fir, that were painstakingly transported from mountain ranges 50 or 60 miles away. This alone was an incredible feat, requiring immense organization and manpower. Across these main beams, they would lay a dense layer of smaller sticks, likely willow or mesquite from the riverbanks. On top of this went a layer of reeds or grasses, and then it was all capped with a thick layer of that same versatile caliche and clay mixture. When this dried, it created a strong, durable, and relatively waterproof surface. So, the Casa Grande is not just a building, it's a geological and botanical library of the Sonoran Desert. Every wall, every floor, is a composition of a specific place. The calcium carbonate from ancient seabeds, the gravel and sand washed down from the mountains, the clay from the river's edge, and the wood from the distant forests, all brought together by human hands and human ingenuity. The Hohokam didn't just live in the desert. They understood it. They read the land. They knew its properties, and they transformed its most basic elements into a monumental structure that has endured for centuries. The land of caliche and clay wasn't an easy place to build, but through their deep knowledge and collaborative effort, the Hohokam turned the very dust beneath their feet into a lasting legacy. Next time, in Chapter 4, we'll step inside the great house and explore the mysteries of its design, its alignment with the cosmos, and what life might have been like within these ancient earthen walls. Thanks for watching. If you're enjoying this series, be sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss our next chapter. We'll see you then. Welcome to our journey back in time, to the arid heart of the Sonoran Desert. Today, we're exploring Chapter 4, the founding of the Great House. Imagine standing here, not in the 21st century, but around the year 1350. The air is thick with the scent of creosote and the low murmur of a thriving community. This is the era when one of the most remarkable structures in ancient North America began to rise from the desert floor. Casa Grande. The decision to build something of this magnitude was not made lightly. It was a statement, a monumental undertaking that would define this community for generations. We don't have written records to tell us exactly why they started, but archaeology gives us incredible clues. Perhaps it was a response to a growing population, a need for a central administrative hub, or a place for important ceremonies. Maybe it was the vision of a powerful leader or a collective decision by the elders. Whatever the reason, the commitment was immense. The first step was gathering the materials. The people here were masters of their environment. They knew where to find the best caliche soil, a natural, concrete-like substance that forms beneath the desert surface. This wasn't as simple as just digging anywhere. They had to prospect for it, test its quality, and then excavate tons of it using hand-tool stone axes, digging sticks, and woven baskets. Each basket of soil was a heavy load, carried back to the construction site under the relentless desert sun. Once the caliche was at the site, the real work began. They mixed it with water and other binders like clay to create a thick, dense mud. This wasn't a quick process. It required a precise recipe, one perfected over centuries of building smaller structures. Too much water, and the walls would slump. Too little, and they would crumble. Then, this heavy adobe mixture was formed into massive blocks, or layered course by course. Think about the sheer labor involved. This was a community effort, with hundreds of people likely participating. Men, women, and even children would have had a role, from holding water to mixing the mud to packing it into the rising walls. The construction itself was a slow, methodical art. They would build up a section of the wall, perhaps a few feet high, and then have to wait. The desert sun, their greatest challenge, also became their greatest ally. It would bake the caliche mud into material as hard as rock. This drying process was crucial and could take days or even weeks for each layer. Patience was as important a tool as any digging stick. As one layer hardened, they would begin the next, slowly, course by course, the structure climbing towards the sky. And what a structure it was becoming. 4 stories high, a skyscraper of its time. To reach these heights, they needed scaffolding. Archaeologists believe they used a complex framework of timbers, likely harvested from the cottonwood and mesquite trees that grew along the nearby Gila River. This brings us to another challenge. The wood. Trees large enough for support, beams and roofing were a precious resource. They had to be carefully selected, felled with stone axes, and then transported, sometimes over long distances. The post holes we see today tell us where these massive timbers were placed, supporting the floors and the roof. Imagine the sight of these huge logs being hoisted into place, a testament to their engineering skill and communal strength. The walls themselves are a marvel of ancient engineering. They are incredibly thick, over 4 feet at the base, tapering as they rise. This design provided immense structural stability, allowing the building to endure for centuries. The outer surfaces were likely plastered with a smoother layer of mud, which would have given the building a more finished, perhaps even gleaming appearance in the bright desert light. It would have been an awe-inspiring sight, visible 4 miles across the flat valley floor. As the years passed, perhaps a decade, perhaps longer, the great house took its final form. It wasn't just a single building, but a compound, surrounded by a protective wall. Inside, a complex of rooms served various purposes. Some were likely for storage, holding surplus corn, beans, and squash that were the lifeblood of the community. Others may have been living quarters for an elite family or the ruling clan. And some rooms, particularly those on the upper floors with their unique celestial alignments, were almost certainly used for ceremony and observation. The precise alignment of openings in the walls with the positions of the sun and moon during solstices and equinoxes tells us they were sophisticated astronomers. These weren't accidental. They were deliberately designed, allowing them to track the seasons, manage their agricultural calendar, and mark important ceremonial dates. The Great House was not just a home. It was a clock, a calendar, and a sacred space, all in one. It was the center of their universe. By around 1450, the construction was complete. For a time, Casa Grande stood as one of the largest, most complex prehistoric structures in all of North America. It was the culmination of generations of knowledge, a symbol of the power, ingenuity, and faith of the ancestral Sonoran Desert people. It represented the peak of their society. Looking at its weathered walls today, we can still feel the echoes of that incredible achievement. The hands that mixed the mud, the minds that planned the design, and the community that brought it to life left a legacy written in the very earth of the desert. This century of creation, from 1350 to 1450, was a golden age for this community. But as we'll explore in our next chapter, all things, even the greatest of houses, eventually faced the winds of change. The story of Casa Grande was far from over. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive into the past. If you're fascinated by ancient civilizations and their incredible stories, be sure to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more journeys into history. We'll see you next time. Welcome back to our journey through history. In this chapter, we're venturing deep into the desert to uncover a true architectural marvel, a structure that defied its environment and stood as a testament to ancient ingenuity. Imagine, rising from the sun-scorched earth, a massive 4-story building. This wasn't just any building. It was a wonder of its time, a rare skyscraper in a land of low-lying structures. Let's start with the material. The builders used what the desert provided. Caliche is a natural cement, a soil hardened with calcium carbonate. They formed massive, thick walls from this earthen material. We're talking walls several feet thick at the base. This incredible thickness served a dual purpose, providing immense structural support for the 4 stories above and creating a natural form of insulation against the brutal desert heat. Step inside, and the temperature difference would have been immediate. The thick caliche walls acted as a thermal mass, absorbing the sun's heat during the day and slowly releasing it during the cool desert night. This passive cooling system kept the interior remarkably comfortable, a cool oasis shielded from the elements. It's a brilliant example of sustainable design, long before the term was ever coined. Now, let's explore the layout, floor by floor. The ground floor was likely the heart of communal life. Imagine a bustling space, perhaps used for storing precious resources like water and grain. Safe from both the heat and any potential threats, this level was the foundation, not just structurally, but for the community that relied on it. It was a place for processing food, crafting tools, and gathering. Climbing to the second and third floors, the purpose shifted. These were the living quarters. A series of interconnected rooms would have provided homes for numerous families. Life here was communal, with shared spaces and private alcoves. Picture families gathering, children playing in the hallways, and the daily rhythms of life echoing through the earthen corridors. The separation from the ground floor offered privacy and security. Finally, we ascend to the fourth floor, the very top of this desert giant. This level was different. It was more open, exposed to the vast sky. Evidence suggests this was a ceremonial space, a place for observation and ritual. From this vantage point, you could see 4 miles across the flat desert landscape. But the view wasn't just horizontal. It was also vertical, looking up at the heavens. And this brings us to one of the most fascinating aspects of this building: its celestial alignment. The architects were also astronomers. They precisely oriented the building to align with specific celestial markers. Certain windows and openings were positioned to capture the light of the sun on the solstices, or the rising of a significant star. This wasn't accidental. It connected the structure to the cosmos, embedding astronomical cycles and celestial events into the very fabric of their daily lives and religious practices. The building was a clock, a calendar, and a temple, all in one. It's crucial to understand just how extraordinary this building was for its time and place. In a region where most people lived in small single-story pit houses or pueblos, a 4-story structure was unheard of. It would have dominated the skyline, visible from a great distance, a symbol of power, organization, and sophisticated knowledge. It announced the presence of a complex and prosperous society. Building such a structure required an immense amount of coordinated labor, quarrying the caliche, mixing it, forming the walls, and hauling timber for the roofs and floors from distant forests was a monumental undertaking. It speaks to a society with a strong central leadership capable of organizing a large workforce over an extended period. This wasn't just a building. It was a statement of what their culture could achieve. The interior spaces were connected by a series of ladders and hatches in the floors. This design, common in the region, offered a defensive advantage. If threatened inhabitants could pull up the ladders, effectively sealing off the upper floors and turning the building into a fortress. It was a practical solution for life in a sometimes unpredictable world. As we look at the ruins today, we can still feel the ambition and skill of its creators. The sheer scale, the clever use of materials for climate control, the multifunctional design of each floor, and the profound connection to the sun and starset all comes together to tell the story of a people who didn't just survive in the desert but thrived. They mastered their environment and reached for the sky, leaving behind a legacy in earth and stone that continues to inspire. This 4-story desert skyscraper wasn't just a place to live. It was the center of a world. It was a hub of trade, a fortress for defense, a home for families, and a sacred link to the universe. It stands as a powerful reminder that innovation and great architecture can be found in the most unexpected of places. Thanks for joining me on this exploration. If you've been enjoying this series, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter. We have so much more to uncover together. See you next time. Have you ever wondered how ancient civilizations built structures that could last for centuries, even in the harshest environments imaginable? Today, we're diving deep into the engineering genius of the Hohokam people, who thrived in the Sonoran Desert of what is now Arizona. We're exploring Chapter 6 of their story, engineering in harsh desert conditions. How did they build something so enduring that it has survived for over 600 years? Let's find out. Imagine trying to build a home in a place where summer temperatures regularly soar past 100 degrees Fahrenheit, where torrential monsoon rains can unleash flash floods, and where powerful winds can kick up blinding dust storms. This was the everyday reality for the Hohokam. Yet, they didn't just survive. They engineered solutions that were centuries ahead of their time. Their most iconic achievement is the Great House at Casa Grande, a massive 4-story structure that stands as a testament to their incredible skill. So, what was their secret? It all starts with the walls. The Hohokam didn't use stone blocks or fired bricks like many other ancient cultures. Instead, they perfected a technique using the very earth beneath their feet. They built their structures with a special type of adobe called caliche. This isn't just ordinary mud. Caliche is a natural concrete, a soil layer rich in calcium carbonate that hardens almost like rock when it dries. The process was painstaking. They would dig trenches for the foundation, then build the walls layer by layer. They'd mix the caliche mud and pour it into forms, letting each layer cure before adding the next. This created walls that were incredibly thick, up to 4 feet at the base of the great house. This massive thickness served a dual purpose. First, it provided immense structural stability, creating a solid, heavy base that was resistant to both wind and the occasional seismic tremor. Second, and perhaps more importantly, these thick walls were a brilliant form of passive climate control. Think of it like a natural thermos. During the scorching desert day, the thick caliche walls would slowly absorb the sun's heat, preventing the interior from becoming an oven. Then, as the desert night brought a significant drop in temperature, the walls would gradually release that stored warmth, keeping the inside comfortable. It was an ingenious, energy-free air conditioning and heating system, all thanks to their deep understanding of material properties. But thick walls alone weren't enough to support a multi-story building. The Hohokam needed to solve the problem of ceilings and floors. For this, they looked to the mountains, far from their desert home. Archaeologists have found that the support beams and roofing materials used in the great house were made from pine, fir, and juniper trees. These trees don't grow in the low desert. The nearest forests would have been over 60 miles away, in the high-altitude mountains. This means the Hohokam organized massive logging expeditions. They would have traveled for days, felled huge trees using stone axes, and then transported these massive logs back to their villages. This was an incredible logistical feat, requiring immense manpower, coordination, and planning. Once back at the site, these wooden beams, some over a foot in diameter, were carefully placed into sockets left in the caliche walls. They formed the structural skeleton for the floors of the upper stories and the roof. They would then lay smaller branches and reeds across these main beams, finally covering it all with a thick layer of adobe to create a solid, waterproof surface. This combination of earthen walls and a wooden skeleton created a remarkably resilient structure. But the Hohokam's engineering prowess didn't stop there. They were also master surveyors and planners. The layout of the great house is not random. It's precisely aligned with celestial events. The building has openings and windows that align perfectly with the sun's position during the solstices. This suggests the structure was not just a dwelling or a fortress, but also a sophisticated astronomical observatory. This precise layout also contributed to its stability. The rectangular, multi-room design created internal buttressing, with interior walls helping to support the massive outer walls. The entire structure worked as a single, cohesive net. Every wall supported another, distributing the immense weight and stress evenly. It's this holistic approach to design that helped it resist the forces of nature for so long. Now, let's consider the elements it had to face. First, rain. The Sonoran Desert experiences intense monsoon storms. The Hohokam engineered their roofs with a slight slope and extended them beyond the walls, creating eaves that directed rainwater away from the base of the structure. This was crucial, as pooling water could erode the caliche foundation and compromise the entire building. They also applied a final, smoother plaster to the exterior walls, which acted as a protective skin, shedding water more effectively. Then there's the wind. A tall, flat-sided building in an open desert is a prime target for strong winds. But the sheer mass of the great house gave it an advantage. Its immense weight, thanks to those 4-foot-thick walls, anchored it firmly to the ground. The aerodynamic profile was likely not a primary consideration, but its bulk alone was its best defense, making it simply too heavy for the wind to push over. And finally, the relentless sun. We already discussed the thermal properties of the walls, but the sun also poses a threat through material degradation. The constant cycle of heating and cooling can cause materials to expand and contract, leading to cracks. However, the monolithic nature of the poured caliche construction, without many joints or mortar lines, made it less susceptible to this kind of damage compared to block-based masonry. The structure expanded and contracted more as a single unit. So, how did all these method-stick caliche walls, imported wooden beams, and precise layouts come together to ensure the building's survival for over 6 centuries. It was a system where every element had a purpose and supported the others. The thick walls provided thermal mass and stability. The wooden beams provided tensile strength and supported the upper floors. The careful orientation wasn't just for astronomy, but likely also considered prevailing winds and sun exposure. The plaster coating protected against erosion. It's a powerful lesson in sustainable and resilient architecture. The Hohokam used local, natural materials in a way that perfectly responded to their environment. They didn't fight the desert, they worked with it. They understood its challenges and engineered elegant, effective solutions. They built a structure so well designed that even after it was abandoned in the 15th century and left to face the elements, alone for hundreds of years, its core still stands today. It has withstood centuries of sun, wind, and rain, outlasting countless other structures from its time. The story of Hohokam engineering is a profound reminder that, with ingenuity, careful observation, and a deep respect for the environment, it's possible to create something of true and lasting stability. Their work is not just a ruin in the desert, it's a masterclass in engineering that continues to inspire AO today. Thanks so much for joining me on this journey into the past. If you found this fascinating, make sure to like this video and subscribe for more deep dives into ancient engineering. Let me know in the comments what other ancient marvels you'd like to explore. See you next time. Hey everyone, welcome back to our journey through history. Today, we're diving deep into the lifeblood of a civilization that bloomed in the heart of the desert. Water. And when we talk about water in the Sonoran Desert, we have to talk about the incredible ingenuity of the Hohokam people. Imagine this: a vast, arid landscape, where the sun beats down relentlessly and rain is a rare, precious gift. How do you build a thriving society here? How do you feed thousands of people? The Hohokam found the answer, and it was revolutionary. They became master engineers of water. For centuries, long before modern machinery, the Hohokam meticulously planned and dug hundreds of miles of canals, creating the most extensive irrigation system in pre-Columbian North America. Think about that for a second. Using nothing more than stone tools, digging sticks, and woven baskets, they carved these vital waterways out of the dry earth. Some of these canals were massive, up to 30 feet wide and 10 feet deep, stretching 4 miles across the valley floor. It's an engineering feat that rivals the great works of ancient Egypt or Rome. And the most amazing part, you can still see the traces of these ancient canals today, faint but persistent reminders etched into the modern landscape of Phoenix and the surrounding areas. These weren't just simple ditches. The Hohokam understood hydraulics. They designed their canals with a precise quintile gradient, just a foot or two of drop per mile. This was the sweet spot. Any steeper, and the water would flow too fast, eroding the canal banks. Any shallower, and the water would stagnate, allowing silt to build up and clog the system. Their knowledge was so precise that modern engineers with all their advanced tools have expressed admiration for the accuracy the Hohokam achieved. They were true masters of their environment, not just surviving in it, but reshaping it to make it flourish. So, why go to all this trouble? The answer is agriculture. This complex network of canals was the circulatory system for a vibrant farming society. The water, diverted from the Salt and Gila rivers, flowed through these main arteries and then into a web of smaller, secondary channels that fanned out to irrigate vast fields. It was this water that transformed the desert floor into a patchwork of green. What were they growing? The staples of life in the Americas: corn, beans, and squash. These 3 crops, known as the 3 sisters, were the foundation of their diet. Corn provided carbohydrates, beans offered protein, and squash gave them essential vitamins and minerals. Growing together, they even helped each other thrive. The corn stalks provided a natural trellis for the beans to climb. The beans fixed nitrogen in the soil, and the broad leaves of the squash shaded the ground, conserving moisture and preventing weeds. But they didn't stop there. The Hohokam were also prolific cotton growers. This wasn't just for personal use. They cultivated cotton on a large scale, and it became a key part of their economy. They would weave this cotton into intricate textiles, blankets, and clothing. These high-quality textiles were highly sought after and became a major trade good. Hohokam cotton traveled far and wide, connecting them to a vast network of other cultures across the Southwest and into Mexico. Through their canals, the Hohokam weren't just growing food, they were growing wealth and influence. This entire agricultural civilization, this bustling society of farmers, artisans, and traders, was completely dependent on the successful management of water. The canals were everything. They dictated where people could live, how much food they could produce, and ultimately, how large their communities could grow. The rhythm of life was tied to the flow of water. There would have been communal efforts to maintain the canals, clearing out silt and repairing breaches. Cooperation was essential. You can imagine entire communities coming together for these crucial tasks, their shared survival depending on their shared work. And this brings us back to enigmatic structures like the Casa Grande. Why was it built? While we can't know for certain, its location in the heart of this agricultural landscape is no coincidence. A structure of this size and complexity would have required a huge, coordinated labor force, fed and supported by the surplus food grown in the surrounding irrigated fields. The Casa Grande stands as a monument to the success of their water management. It was a central point in a land made fertile by human hands and ingenuity. It likely served as a hub for ceremony, for trade, for astronomy, and for administrational functions of a stable, prosperous society built on the foundation of controlled water. The story of the Hohokam is a powerful lesson in sustainability and adaptation. They didn't just live in the desert, they partnered with it. They understood its challenges and its opportunities. They saw the life-giving potential of the rivers and, with incredible skill and vision, they harnessed that potential to create a world of abundance. When you look at the ruins of Casa Grande or the faint outlines of an ancient canal, you're not just seeing old dirt and clay. You are seeing the legacy of a people who knew the profound truth that in the desert, water is life, and the ability to manage it is the ultimate power. Thanks so much for joining me on this exploration. It's truly humbling to consider the achievements of the Hohokam. If you enjoyed this, please give the video a like and subscribe for more deep dives into the mysteries of the past. See you next time. Imagine, for a moment, stepping back in time, nearly 1,000 years ago. You're standing in the Sonoran Desert, but it's not empty. Before you rises the Casa Grande, the Great House, a magnificent 4-story structure made of the very earth it stands on. It's the heart of a bustling community, a thriving network of life under the Arizona sun. Let's wander through the village that surrounds this ancient skyscraper. The air hums with activity. All around the Great House, smaller, single-story adobe homes clustered together, forming family compounds. These aren't just simple shelters. They are homes filled with the warmth of generations. Each compound has its own courtyard, a private space for daily chores and family gatherings. You can almost hear the soft scrape of a stone mano against a metate as someone grinds corn, the rhythmic thump-thump-thump echoing through the morning air. Look closer at the ground. See those circular depressions. Those are storage pits, the community's pantries. Lined with clay and sealed with a heavy lid, they protected precious harvests of corn, beans, and squash from pests and the harsh desert elements. These pits were a symbol of security, a promise of food through the dry seasons, and a testament to the people's foresight and hard work. The bounty they held was the lifeblood of the village, a direct result of their mastery over the desert. Now, let's walk towards the more open spaces. This village wasn't just a collection of homes. It was a society with a rich spiritual life. Here you'll find ceremonial areas, sacred spaces set apart from the everyday, perhaps a small plaza where people gathered for rituals. The air thick with the scent of burning creosote and the sound of chants rising to the sky. These were places where the community connected with their cosmos, honored their ancestors, and celebrated the cycles of nature that governed their existence. And over there, can you see it? That large, oval depression in the earth, with sloping sides. It's a place of immense social and ritual importance. Imagine the energy here on game day. 2 teams, running, leaping, striking a solid rubber ball with their hips. trying to score. The crowd would be roaring, a mix of cheers and bets. The game a complex blend of sport, ceremony, and social negotiation. These ball courts connected the Casa Grande community to a wider world, part of a tradition that stretched far to the south, into Mexico. Let's try to feel the rhythm of a day here. The sun rises, casting long shadows across the valley. The farmers are already in the fields, tending to the crops that flourish, thanks to an incredible network of irrigation canals. They are masters of water, coaxing life from the arid land. The Gila River, their partner in this endeavor, nourishes the soil, and the morning is a quiet, focused time of cultivation and care. This is the foundation of everything. Without the food from these fields, the village could not exist. As the sun climbs higher and the day heats up, the rhythm shifts. People retreat to the shade of their homes or ramadas, open-sided shelters that offer a cool respite. The afternoon is a time for crafts. Listen, that's the sound of pottery being made. Women sit together, coiling ropes of clay, smoothing the surfaces with polished stones, their hands moving with an inherited grace. They paint intricate designs in red and black geometric patterns, stylized birds, human figures each piece, a story, a work of art. Elsewhere, you might see someone firing the finished pots in a shallow pit, the smoke curling up into the blue sky. This is when the village's creativity truly shines. Other artisans are at work, too. A man carefully chips a piece of obsidian, shaping it into a razor-sharp arrowhead. Another weaves cotton, grown in the nearby fields, into a soft, durable cloth on a simple loom. Children play in the small plazas, their laughter mixing with the sounds of work. The games mimic the adults' world, molding little clay figures or building miniature canals in the dirt. Life is a constant process of doing, making, and learning. As the sun begins to set, the desert landscape transforms. The sky blazes with orange, pink, and purple. The intense heat of the day finally breaks, and a cool breeze whispers through the mesquite trees. A new energy fills the village. This is the time for community. Families gather around crackling fires. The aroma of roasting corn and savory stews fills the air. This is when the stories are told. An elder begins to speak, their voice a mesmerizing cadence in the twilight. They recount the deeds of ancestors, the tales of creation, the journeys of the clans. They explain the patterns of the stars, the behavior of the animals, and the meaning of the rituals. The children listen, wide-eyed, absorbing the wisdom and identity of their people. These stories are not just entertainment. They are the threads that weave the past into the present, connecting each person to the long line of those who came before. They are the cultural glue that holds the community together. Night falls, completely. The stars are a brilliant canopy overhead, seeming so close you could almost touch them. The fires burn low, casting a warm, flickering glow on the faces of the people. The village settles into a peaceful quiet, the sounds of the desert night taking over the chirp of crickets, the distant howl of a coyote. Everyone is secure in their homes, part of a strong, interconnected community, resting and ready for the sun to rise and begin the cycle of life once more at the foot of the great house. This was the world of the Casa Grande community, not a silent ruin, but a vibrant, living place. It was a testament to human ingenuity, resilience, and the deep, enduring power of community. When we look at the great house today, we're not just seeing an ancient building. We are seeing the silent echo of thousands of sunrises, millions of footsteps, and countless stories whispered in the desert night. Thanks for joining me on this journey back in time. If you enjoyed this glimpse into the past, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more stories from history. See you next time. Welcome back to our exploration of Casa Grande. In this chapter, we turn our gaze upwards to the sky and explore the profound astronomical significance of this ancient structure. Far from being just a shelter, Casa Grande was a sophisticated observatory, a calendar etched in earth and wood, designed to track the movements of the cosmos. Let's begin with the most fundamental celestial event, the sun. The people who built Casa Grande were keen observers of the sun's path. Archaeological evidence strongly suggests that certain openings in walls were deliberately aligned to capture the first or last rays of sunlight on the summer and winter solstices. Imagine standing within these walls as the longest day of the year arrives. A specific window, perhaps just a small aperture, would perfectly frame the rising or setting sun, casting a precise beam of light onto a designated spot on an interior wall. This wasn't accidental. It was a reliable yearly marker, signaling the turn of the seasons. For an agricultural society, knowing exactly when to plant and when to harvest was a matter of survival. The solstices were crucial data points, and Casa Grande was the instrument used to read them. This solar alignment allowed the community to synchronize their lives with the great, predictable rhythm of the sun. But the sun wasn't their only guide. The moon also played a vital role in their cosmology and timekeeping. The lunar cycle, with its waxing and waning phases, provided another layer of temporal measurement. While solar alignments are more permanent and easier to identify in ruins, researchers have proposed that Casa Grande was also used to track significant lunar events. This includes the lunar standstill, a more complex cycle that occurs every 18.6 years. During a major lunar standstill, the moon rises and sets at its most extreme northern and southern points on the horizon. Certain windows in Casa Grande appear to align with these extreme positions. Observing this long, intricate cycle would have required generations of accumulated knowledge, passed down from one skywatcher to the next. It demonstrates a level of astronomical sophistication that goes far beyond simple seasonal tracking, hinting at a deep cultural and perhaps spiritual connection to the moon's long and mysterious dance. Beyond the sun and moon, the stars themselves were a celestial map. The Hohokam, like many ancient cultures, likely had their own constellations and star lore, which guided them not just in navigation, but in ceremony and storytelling. While direct evidence is harder to pinpoint, it's highly probable that key star positions were also tracked from Casa Grande. For instance, the rising of certain star groups, like the Pleiades, often coincided with important agricultural or ceremonial times in many cultures of the Americas. Alignments within the structure might have pointed to the helico-rising of such stars, that is, their first appearance in the pre-dawn sky after a period of being hidden by the sun's glare. This would have been another crucial signal, another tick on their celestial clock, helping to regulate the community's annual calendar. So, how was this celestial observation practically carried out? Let's consider the architecture of Casa Grande itself, particularly its upper rooms. The structure rises for stories, granting an unparalleled panoramic view of the surrounding flat desert landscape and the vast, clear sky. This elevated position would have been essential. From the ground, the horizon is often obscured by terrain or vegetation. But from the top of Casa Grande, observers would have had a clean, unobstructed 360-degree view. This has led many experts to believe that the upper rooms served as dedicated watch stations or observatories. Imagine an ancient astronomer, a respected member of the community, ascending to the highest level of the structure as twilight settled. From this vantage point, they could watch the sun dip below the horizon, noting its exact position against distant mountains. They could track the moon's path across the stardusted sky and wait for the first glimpse of a significant star group rising in the east. The various openings in the walls weren't just windows for light or air. They were precisely engineered viewing ports. Each one may have been designed to frame a specific celestial event at a specific time of year. One opening for the winter solstice sunset, another for the summer solstice sunrise, and perhaps others for the lunar standstills, or the rising of a particular star. These sky watchers were the community's timekeepers. Their scientists, their observations, made from these high watch stations, would have dictated the timing of ceremonies, the schedule for planting crops, and the rhythm of daily life. It's important to approach this with a sense of calm, scientific curiosity. The astronomical functions of Casa Grande aren't based on wild speculation or mystical exaggeration. They are rooted in careful measurement, architectural analyses, and a comparative understanding of other ancient observatories around the world. The evidence points to a people with a deep and practical understanding of the sky. They were not just passive observers. They were active participants in the cosmic order. They built Casa Grande not only as a great house, but as a great instrument. A tool to connect their world on the desert floor with the predictable, powerful cycles of the heavens. The structure is a testament to their ingenuity, their patience, and their desire to find their place within the universe. It's a silent, enduring monument to the first astronomers of the Sonoran Desert. Thank you for joining us on this celestial journey. In our next chapter, we'll delve into the daily life and social structure of the people who called Casa Grande home. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss it. Welcome back to our series. In this chapter, we re-dive in deep into one of the biggest mysteries surrounding ancient Pueblan culture: the true purpose of the great houses. These massive, sophisticated structures have fascinated archaeologists for decades, and while we don't have one definitive answer, several compelling theories offer us a glimpse into what these places might have been. So, what were these monumental buildings really for? Let's explore the leading ideas. The first major theory, and one of the most widely supported, is that the great houses served as ceremonial centers. Imagine these magnificent structures as the cathedrals of their time. The scale of the architecture, the intricate layouts, and the presence of numerous kivasta subterranean chambers used for religious rituals point toward a profound spiritual significance. The great houses are often centrally located, suggesting they were focal points for a widespread community. Archaeologists who support this view believe that people from smaller, surrounding settlements would travel to the great houses for important seasonal ceremonies, religious festivals, and other significant rituals. The sheer size of these buildings far exceeds the needs of a small residential population, indicating they were built to accommodate large gatherings. The careful alignment of some buildings with celestial events, like solstices and equinoxes, further strengthens the idea that these were sacred spaces designed to connect the people with the cosmos and the rhythms of the natural world. The effort required to build them, quarrying stone, felling and transporting massive timbers over long distances, suggests a shared, community-wide commitment driven by a powerful, unifying belief system. In T-Slight, the great houses were not just buildings. They were the very heart of a people's spiritual life. Another compelling theory proposes that the great houses functioned as administrative hubs, specifically for managing complex irrigation systems. The ancestral Pueblans were brilliant farmers who thrived in an arid environment, and their success depended heavily on their ability to control and distribute water. Building and maintaining extensive canal networks, dams, and reservoirs would have required a tremendous amount of coordination and organization. According to this theory, the great houses were the centers of power from which this large-scale water management was directed. An elite class of leaders or priests might have resided there, overseeing the allocation of water resources, organizing labor for canal construction and repair, and settling disputes among different farming communities. This would explain the strategic locations of many great houses near major water sources and agricultural fields. The storage capacity found within these structures also supports this idea. Large rooms that appear to be for storage could have held surplus food which might have been collected as a form of tribute or tax, and then redistributed during times of drought, or to support workers engaged in public projects. In this model, the great houses were not just religious centers, but also the political and economic engines that managed the lifeblood of the entire society: water. They were the headquarters for a sophisticated agricultural civilization, ensuring its survival and prosperity through careful, centralized planning and administration. This theory paints a picture of a highly organized society with a clear social hierarchy. A third, an equally fascinating theory, is that the great houses were sophisticated observatories. The ancestral Pueblans had a deep understanding of the sky. They were keen observers of the sun, moon, and stars, and this knowledge was crucial for their survival. Tracking the seasons was essential for agriculture. Knowing the precise time to plant and harvest crops could mean the difference between a bountiful yield and a devastating famine. Many great houses exhibit remarkable astronomical alignments. Windows, doorways, and other architectural features are often positioned to frame the rising or setting sun on the solstices and equinoxes. For example, at certain sites, a beam of light might shine through a specific opening to illuminate a niche or a marking on a wall only on the longest or shortest day of the year. These celestial alignments are too precise and too frequent to be coincidental. Proponents of the observatory theory argue that specialized priests or astronomers used the great houses to maintain a highly accurate calendar. This calendar would have governed not only agricultural activities, but also the timing of important religious ceremonies and community events. The buildings themselves would have been giant, functioning astronomical instruments. This theory doesn't necessarily exclude the others. In fact, it complements them. The knowledge gained from observing the heavens would have been a source of great power and spiritual authority, reinforcing the role of the great houses as both ceremonial and administrative centers. It shows a culture where science, religion, and daily life were seamlessly intertwined. Finally, we have the theory that the great houses were primarily gathering sites for regional communities. This idea views them not as permanent residences for a large population, but as central places where people from scattered, smaller villages would come together periodically. Think of it like a regional fairground or a convention center. These gatherings would have been multi-purpose events, combining trade, social interaction, and ceremony. Evidence for this theory includes the vast open plazas found at many great house sites, which are perfect for accommodating large crowds. The road systems that connect many of these sites also suggest they were intended to be accessible to people from across the region. People might have traveled to the great house to trade goods like pottery, turquoise, and food, to arrange marriages, to share information, and to strengthen social bonds between different clans or communities. These gatherings would have reinforced a shared cultural identity among people living across a wide geographic area. The communal construction of the great house itself would have been a powerful unifying project. While ceremonies were certainly a part of these events, this theory places a greater emphasis on the social and economic functions of the gathering. It portrays the great houses as vibrant hubs of human connection, where a dispersed population could come together to reaffirm their relationships and participate in the life of the wider community. It was a place to see and be seen, to trade, to celebrate, and to be part of something larger than oneself. So, which theory is correct? The most likely answer is that they all are, to some extent. It's highly improbable that these complex, monumental structures served only a single purpose. They were likely multifunctional centers, where religion, politics, science, and social life all came together. They were ceremonial centers for a deeply spiritual people, administrative hubs for managing a sophisticated agricultural society, observatories for tracking the cosmos, and gathering places that knitted a regional community together. The great houses were the heart of the ancestral Pueblan world, and their true purpose was likely a rich and complex tapestry woven from all of these vital functions. Each theory gives us a different lens through which to appreciate the ingenuity and complexity of this incredible ancient culture. Thanks for watching this chapter. We hope this exploration of the theories behind the great houses has given you a deeper appreciation for their mystery and magnificence. Be sure to join us for the next chapter as we continue our journey. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss it. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're diving deep into Chapter 11, where we get to be digital archaeologists and explore the incredible pottery, crafts, and daily tools unearthed around the Casa Grande. These aren't just old objects. They're puzzle pieces that tell us a rich story about the lives, beliefs, and connections of the ancestral Sonoran Desert people. So, grab your virtual trowel, and let's start digging. First up, let's talk about the signature ceramic of this region, the beautiful Radon buff pottery. Imagine holding a piece of this. The clay has this warm, earthy, buff-colored base, and then skilled hands painted these intricate designs on top, using a slip made from red iron oxide. The patterns weren't random. You'd see geometric shapes, swirling lines, and sometimes even stylized figures of animals and people. Each design was a form of expression, maybe telling a story, representing a clan, or holding spiritual meaning. These weren't just decorative items sitting on a shelf. They were the dishes of daily life. Large pots, or alas, were used for storing precious water and grains, like maize, keeping them cool and safe from pests. Smaller bowls and jars were used for cooking and serving food. The sheer quantity of this pottery found tells us that this was a thriving, settled community. The consistency and style across a wide area also suggests a shared cultural identity. Making this pottery was a specialized skill, likely passed down through generations. It required knowledge of where to find the right clay, how to process it, and how to fire it to the perfect temperature. It's a beautiful blend of artistry and practicality. Now, let's move from the earth of the desert to the distant sea. Archaeologists have found some truly stunning ornaments here, crafted from seashells. And what's amazing is that these shells come from the Gulf of California, hundreds of miles away. We're talking about delicate bracelets, pendants, and intricate mosaics made from species like Glycymaris and oliva shells. Some were even etched with acid to create complex, raised designs, a remarkably advanced technique for its time. Think about what this means. These weren't just pretty, they were luxury goods, symbols of status and connection. The presence of these shells proves the existence of vast and sophisticated trade networks. People at Casa Grande weren't isolated. They were part of a dynamic system of exchange that stretched across different cultures and landscapes. Imagine traders undertaking long, arduous journeys, carrying valuable goods like these shells, perhaps in exchange for cotton, turquoise, or food grown in the fertile river valleys here. These shells connected the desert dwellers to the coastal peoples, showing us a world that was far more interconnected than we might imagine. They tell a story of exploration, economics, and shared cultural value. Next, let us look at a tool that was absolutely essential for survival in the Sonoran Desert. The agave knife. If you've ever seen an agave plant, or a century plant, you know how tough and fibrous it is. But for the ancestral people, this plant was a supermarket. It provided food, fiber, for making ropes and textiles, and even a sweet liquid. But to harvest and process it, you needed a special tool. The agave knife wasn't a knife in the modern sense, with a sharp metal blade. Instead, it was typically a flat, broad stone tool, often a slab of schist or slate, with a rough but effective working edge. Archaeologists often find these tools with a distinct, glossy sheen on the edge, which is called sickle gloss. This polish comes from the silica in the agave leaves, building up over time through repeated use, cutting and scraping those tough fibers. Finding these tools tells us directly about the diet and economy of the people. It confirms their reliance on native desert plants. The process was labor-intensive. After cutting the leaves, they would roast the heart of the agave in huge earthen pits for days, turning the starchy core into a sweet, nutritious food source that could be eaten right away or dried and stored for later. The agave knife is a humble object, but it represents ingenuity and a deep understanding of how to live sustainably in a challenging environment. It's a direct link to the daily work and resilience of the community. Finally, we can't talk about daily life without mentioning the vast array of other stone tools. These were the multi-tools of the ancient world. We have emanosan metates, the grinding stones used to process mason to flour for making bread. The smooth, worn surfaces of these stones speak to countless hours of labor, usually performed by women, turning hard corn kernels into a dietary staple. Then there are projectile points, arrowheads, and spear points chipped with incredible skill from materials like obsidian, chert, and flint. These show us they were skilled hunters, pursuing game like deer and rabbit. The different styles and materials of these points can even help archaeologists trace trade routes and interactions with other groups, as certain types of stone can be sourced to specific quarries. We also find stone axes, crucial for clearing land for farming and for cutting wood to build their impressive homes and public structures, like the Casa Grande itself. These axes were often grooved, so they could be securely hafted onto a wooden handle. Every one of these stone tools, from the simplest scraper to the most finely crafted axe, is a testament to the resourcefulness of the people. They looked at the landscape, saw the potential in a simple rock, and had the knowledge and skill to shape it into something that could build a home, prepare a meal, or defend their community. So, as we put all these pieces together, the red and buff pottery, the exotic shell jewelry, the practical agave knives, and the versatile stone tools, a vivid picture of life at Casa Grande emerges. We see a community that was deeply rooted in its desert environment, but also connected to a much wider world through trade and cultural exchange. These artifacts are not silent. They speak to us of art, industry, food, faith, and the incredible ingenuity of the ancestral Sonoran Desert people. They show us how everyday objects can hold the grandest stories. Thanks for joining me on this archaeological journey today. I hope this gives you a new appreciation for the stories hidden in the objects left behind. If you enjoyed this, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter. See you next time. Welcome back to our series on ancient civilizations. Today, we rejourneying to the American Southwest to unravel the mysteries of the Hohokam people and their incredible society. Specifically, we're going to tackle a huge question. Who was in charge? What did leadership look like for the Hohokam, the master irrigators of the desert? Let's start with what we know. The Hohokam culture thrived for over 1,000 years, from roughly 300 to 1500 AD, in what is now Arizona. Their most famous achievement, a massive network of irrigation canals, some stretching for miles, that turned the arid Sonoran Desert into fertile farmland. Building and maintaining these canals wasn't a small task. It required immense cooperation. Think about it. You need to plan the routes, dig the channels, allocate the water fairly, and organize regular cleaning and repairs. This level of coordination strongly suggests some form of leadership or a governing body. Someone had to be making decisions, resolving disputes over water rights, and rallying the community for these huge public works projects. Archaeologists have found evidence of platform mounds at larger Hohokam sites, like Snake. These elevated structures were likely the centers of community life, hosting ceremonies and rituals. The people who directed these ceremonies, perhaps religious leaders or shamans, would have held significant influence. Imagine a figure standing atop a mound, addressing the community, their voice carrying over the village. This person could have been a key part of the social glue holding everyone together. We also see differences in the goods found in burials. Some individuals were buried with more elaborate items, beautifully crafted pottery, intricate shell jewelry, and exotic stones. This suggests that some people had higher status or more wealth than others. This social stratification points to a hierarchical society, where certain families or individuals held more power and prestige. These elites might have controlled trade networks, bringing in goods from as far away as the Gulf of California and Mesoamerica. Their access to these rare items would have reinforced their special status within the community. So, we have evidence for organized labor, religious authority, and social hierarchy. But here's where things get tricky. Despite all this, we haven't found the kind of evidence we see in other complex societies. There are no grand palaces for kings, no written records of laws or royal lineages, and no definitive portraits of all-powerful rulers. Hohokam leadership seems to have been more subtle, perhaps more decentralized or communal than a top-down monarchy. This brings us to one of the most magnificent and enigmatic structures in the entire Southwest. The Casa Grande, or Great House. Standing for stories tall in the desert, this monumental building is a testament to Hohokam engineering and ambition. It was constructed around 1350 AD, during the classic period of Hohokam culture. Its sheer scale is staggering. Let's break down why Casa Grande is such a powerful clue about Hohokam organization. First, the materials. The walls are made of a specific type of earth called caliche, which is like a natural desert concrete. To build, these workers had to quarry tons and tons of this material, mix it with water to the right consistency, and then pack it into forms, layer by layer, to build the walls. This wasn't a random process. It required specialized knowledge of the material and a highly disciplined workforce. Then there's the planning. The Great House is not just a big block. It's a complex of rooms and passages, aligned with specific astronomical events. For example, certain openings in the walls align with the sun's position during the summer solstice and the This tells us the builders had advanced knowledge of astronomy and integrated it directly into the architecture. This isn't something you improvise. It requires architects, astronomers, and project managers who could create a detailed blueprint and oversee its execution. Who were these master planners? We don't know their names, but their genius is literally set in stone. Finally, consider the labor. Scholars estimate that building Casa Grande would have taken a huge number of people a significant amount of time. We're talking about a massive, coordinated effort. You'd need people to dig the caliche, people to haul it, others to haul water, teams to mix the mud, and skilled masons to build the walls. And while they were doing all this, they still needed to be fed and housed. This implies a system that could mobilize and support a large labor force, likely drawing from a number of surrounding villages. It suggests a regional leader or a council with the authority to command this kind of community project. So, what does Casa Grande tell us about Hohokam leadership? It screams organized labor, sophisticated planning, and community coordination on a grand scale, but it still doesn't give us a king. It might have been the home of an elite family, a ceremonial center, or an astronomical observatory managed by a priesthood. The purpose of the great house is still debated. Was it a chief's residence? A temple? A watchtower? Or all of the above? This is the central puzzle of Hohokam leadership. We see the results of powerful organization everywhere in the canals, the platform mounds, and the great house. Yet, the leaders themselves remain in the shadows. Were they powerful chiefs who ruled with an iron fist? Or were they respected elders or religious figures who led by consensus and persuasion? Perhaps leadership was more fluid, with different people taking charge for different tasks: a canal expert for irrigation projects, a priest for ceremonies, and a war leader in times of conflict. What remains unknown is the precise nature of their political system. The Hohokam didn't leave us a political treatise. Their story is told through the things they left behind: their pots, their tools, their homes, and their magnificent public works. As we continue to study these artifacts, we piece together a picture of a complex and highly successful society. A society that managed to thrive in a challenging environment through cooperation, ingenuity, and a form of leadership that was effective, even if it remains a mystery to us today. The story of the Hohokam and Casa Grande is a powerful reminder that there are many different ways to organize a society and to lead a community. It challenges our assumptions and encourages us to keep digging, keep questioning, and keep exploring the incredible diversity of human history. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive into the world of the Hohokam. If you found this fascinating, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell so you don't miss our next exploration into the past. Let me know in the comments what you think. Who do you believe is in charge at Casa Grande? See you next time. Welcome back to our journey through the ancient Southwest. In today's chapter, we're tracing the footsteps of traders, following the faint desert paths that connected a vast and vibrant world. This is the story of the Hohokam and their remarkable trade networks. Imagine a world without highways or overnight shipping, a world where every connection was forged by foot, one slow, deliberate step at a time. This was the reality for the Hohokam traders. They were the lifeblood of the desert, linking their communities in what is now Arizona with distant peoples across hundreds, even thousands of miles. Their journeys were not just about commerce. They were epic treks of endurance, knowledge, and trust, woven into the very fabric of their society. Let's start by looking at a map of their world. From their heartland in the Sonoran Desert, pathways spider-webbed out in every direction. To the west, they reached the shimmering coasts of California and the Gulf of California. To the south, their connections extended deep into Mesoamerica, linking them with the complex societies of what is now Mexico, and all around them. They were in constant contact with their neighbors, the ancestral Pueblones to the north and the Mogollon to the east. This wasn't a random collection of trails. It was a sophisticated, long-distance network that had been maintained for centuries. What compelled these traders to cross such vast and challenging landscapes? The answer lies in a combination of desire, necessity, and belief. Let's unpack the precious goods they carried. Perhaps the most iconic trade item from the Southwest is turquoise. This beautiful blue-green stone was more than just a decoration. It was sacred, sourced from mines scattered across the region, including the famous Cerrillos mines in New Mexico. Turquoise was a symbol of wealth, status, and spiritual power. Hohokam artisans would work this stone into intricate beads, pendants, and mosaics. And when Hohokam traders traveled south, they carried this precious cargo, which was highly prized by the civilizations of Mexico. In return, goods of equal value would flow back north. From the opposite direction, from the distant coasts, came the iridescent glimmer of shells. Traders would make the long journey to the Pacific Ocean and the Gulf of California to acquire species like abalone, conus, and olive. Back in their villages, Hohokam craftspeople demonstrated incredible skill, transforming these shells. They etched them with intricate designs using a weak acid, a surprisingly advanced technique. They cut them into the shapes of animals, like frogs and birds, and fashioned them into bracelets, rings, and beads. These marine shells were not just jewelry. They were exotic symbols of the faraway sea, objects imbued with the power and mystery of the water spirits. Imagine living your entire life in the dry desert and holding a piece of the ocean in your hand. That was a powerful experience. Another vital material that traveled these networks was obsidian. This volcanic glass, prized for its ability to be flaked into razor-sharp edges, was the high-tech material of its day. It was essential for making projectile points for hunting, sharp knives for butchering, and tools for all sorts of crafts. While some obsidian sources were relatively local, high-quality obsidian from specific locations was traded over long distances. Geochemical analysis allows archaeologists today to trace a single obsidian artifact back to its exact volcanic source, giving us a concrete map of these ancient trade routes. It's like a geological fingerprint, proving connections between people hundreds of miles apart. But trade wasn't just about hard, durable goods. The Hohokam were master farmers, and their agricultural surplus was another key component of their economy. They cultivated cotton with great success in the hot desert climate, thanks to their ingenious canal systems. This cotton was spun into thread and woven into textiles, blankets, clothing, and ceremonial items. These textiles were not only practical, but also served as a canvas for artistic expression. We can imagine traders carrying bundles of raw cotton or finished textiles to neighboring groups who lived in areas less suited for cotton cultivation. In exchange, the Hohokam might receive different types of food, like pinnon nuts from higher elevations or different strains of corn and beans, diversifying their diet and ensuring their resilience. And the influence from the south, from Mesoamerica, was profound. This wasn't just a simple exchange of goods. It was a conduit for ideas, technologies, and beliefs. One of the most striking examples is the presence of ball courts in Hohokam villages. These large, oval-shaped depressions are architecturally similar to the ball courts found throughout Mesoamerica, where a ritual ball game was a central part of social and religious life. The presence of these courts suggests that the Hohokam not only imported the idea but also participated in their own version of this significant cultural tradition. Alongside the ball game came other exotic items. The remains of macaws, colorful parrots, native to the tropical forests of Mexico, have been found carefully buried in Hohokam sites. These birds were clearly not local. They would have been transported over immense distances as young chicks, hand-reared, and treated as sacred, ceremonial beings. Their vibrant feathers were likely used in religious regalia, symbolizing a connection to the powerful spiritual world of the South. Another fascinating trade good from Mesoamerica was copper bells. These weren't large church bells, but small, tinkling ornaments made using a sophisticated lost wax cast-in technique. This technology was developed in West Mexico and traveled north along the trade routes. Finding one of these tiny copper bells in an Arizona archaeological site is a direct link, a tangible piece of evidence of this 1,000-mile connection. It speaks of a trader who walked from the tropical coasts of Mexico all the way to the Sonoran Desert, carrying not just a product, but a piece of advanced metallurgical knowledge with him. So, let's picture the journey. A trader prepares to leave his village. He packs his goods into a woven basket or net, supported by a tump line across his forehead. He carries a gourd of water, some dried food, and perhaps a walking stick. He knows the trails intimately, where to find water, which mountain passes to take, where to find shelter. He travels not alone, but likely in a small group for safety and companionship. For days, even weeks, they walk. They traverse scorching desert flats, navigate rocky canyons, and cross flowing rivers. Along the way, they meet other travelers. They stop at way station villages, places that grew up along these major arteries of trade. Here, they could rest, replenish their supplies, and exchange news and stories. These journeys were the internet of their time, connecting disparate communities with a flow of information. News of a drought, a conflict, or a new ceremony would travel along these same paths. The act of trade itself was likely steeped in ritual and social protocol. It wasn't like a modern transaction with a credit card. It was about building relationships, renewing alliances, and negotiating terms based on kinship and mutual respect. An exchange of turquoise for shells was also an exchange of trust, a promise of future cooperation. These networks were resilient, adapting over centuries to changing climates, shifting alliances, and the rise and fall of regional powers. When we look at a simple shell bracelet or a turquoise bead excavated from a Hohokam site, we're not just looking at an ancient artifact. We're looking at the final destination of an incredible journey. We are seeing the physical embodiment of a connection that spanned deserts, mountains, and cultures. The Hohokam world was anything but isolated. It was a dynamic, interconnected hub, a crucial link in a chain of human interaction that stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the heart of Mexico. Their legacy is written not just in their canals and villages, but in the faint, enduring desert trails that bound their world together. Thank you so much for joining me on this leg of our journey. I hope it gives you a new appreciation for the complexity and sophistication of these ancient cultures. If you enjoyed this chapter, please hit that like button and be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next exploration. See you next time. Imagine standing in the vast, silent landscape of Choco Canyon. The wind whispers through the empty rooms of Pueblo Bonito. What stories would these stones tell if they could speak? They'd speak of a vibrant, bustling world. A world where the great houses weren't just homes, but the very heart of a community's spiritual and social life. Today, we're journeying back in time to explore the rituals, gatherings, and community life of the ancestral people. Let's uncover how these magnificent structures connected a people to the cosmos, the seasons, and each other. The lives of the Chacoan people were intricately woven with the rhythms of the natural world. The sun, moon, and stars weren't just celestial bodies. They were divine calendars, signaling when to plant, when to harvest, and when to gather for sacred ceremonies. The architecture of the great houses itself is a testament to this profound connection. Many of these massive buildings are aligned with remarkable precision to solar and lunar events. Take the famous Sun Dagger petroglyph on Fajada Butte, for instance. Here, on the solstices and equinoxes, slivers of sunlight slice through carefully placed rock slabs to mark key points in the year. This wasn't just a calendar. It was a cosmic clock, a sacred intersection of human ingenuity and celestial movement. But this was just one example. Throughout the canyon, windows and corner doors in the great houses were strategically placed to frame the rising or setting sun on these crucial days. Imagine the scene on the summer solstice. As dawn breaks, a beam of light shoots through a specific window in a great house, illuminating a niche or a symbol on the opposite wall. For the people gathered, this wasn't just an astronomical observation. It was a powerful, shared experience, a confirmation that the world was in order, that the heavens were aligned, and that their community was in harmony with the universe. These events would have been the trigger for major ceremonies, moments of immense social and religious importance. These gatherings weren't small, family affairs. Evidence suggests that people traveled from dozens, even hundreds of miles away to participate. Choco Canyon was a pilgrimage center. Think of it like a medieval cathedral, a place people journeyed to for spiritual renewal and connection. The Great Kivas, the massive, circular, subterranean chambers found within or near the great houses, were the grand theaters for these rituals. Picture yourself descending the ladder into one of these kivas. The air is cool and smells of earth and burning juniper. The only light comes from a central fire pit, casting flickering shadows on the painted walls. Around you, dozens, perhaps hundreds, of people are gathered. The sound of chanting, drumming, and rattles fills the enclosed space, the acoustics amplifying every note into a resonant, soul-stirring hum. These were multi-day events, filled with storytelling, song, dance, and prayer. Elders would pass down origin stories, clan histories, and a vast body of knowledge about the world. It was here that a sense of shared identity was forged and reinforced. The rituals themselves would have been rich with symbolism. They likely reenacted creation myths, honored ancestral spirits, and appealed to supernatural forces for rain, fertility, and a successful harvest. Dancers adorned in elaborate costumes made of feathers, shells, and turquoise would impersonate deities and spirits, their movements telling stories that everyone understood. These weren't performances for an audience. They were acts of participation, where the entire community joined together to maintain balance and harmony in their world. Beyond these major seasonal ceremonies, the great houses were also the backdrop for the everyday rituals of social life. They were places for trade, for settling disputes, and for arranging marriages. The large plazas would have been filled with the energy of a marketplace, with people exchanging pottery, tools, turquoise, and even exotic goods like macaw, feathers, and seashells brought from hundreds of miles away. This trade wasn't just economic, it was social glue, creating and maintaining networks of alliance and kinship across a vast region. Feasting was another critical component of community life. Archaeological evidence shows massive amounts of pottery and the bones of deer, pronghorn, and other game, suggesting that huge communal meals were prepared and shared. These feasts would have followed important ceremonies, cementing the bonds of the community. Sharing food is a universal human experience of creating fellowship, and for the Chacoanes, it would have been a tangible expression of their interconnectedness. The Great House, in Sensei, was a place of redistribution, where resources were pooled and shared, ensuring a sense of collective well-being. The social structure itself was likely reflected in these gatherings. While the society is often described as egalitarian, the sheer scale of the great houses and the exotic goods found within them suggest that some individuals or clans held more prominent roles. Perhaps they were the keepers of ceremonial knowledge, the astronomers who tracked the sun and moon, or the leaders who organized the construction and the regional trade networks. These gatherings would have been an opportunity for them to reaffirm their status, not through force, but through their ability to host, to provide, and to lead the community in the sacred rituals that ensured everyone's survival and prosperity. So, when we look at the great houses of Chaco, we shouldn't see them as empty ruins. We should see them as they were. Dynamic, living centers of a complex society. They were observatories, temples, community centers, and political hubs, all rolled into one. They were the stages upon which the great drama of Chacoan life unfolded. They were the anchors that linked the people to the cycles of the seasons, the movements of the cosmos, and most importantly, to a Yecho. The rituals and gatherings held here were the lifeblood of the culture, the very means by which they navigated their world and understood their place within it. The legacy of these community practices is incredibly resilient. Many of the ceremonial patterns and a deep connection to the calendar and the landscape can still be seen in the practices of modern Pueblo peoples. Today, descendants of the Chacoans. The songs may have changed, and the rituals evolved, but the fundamental understanding of community, of a life lived in harmony with the earth and the sky, endures. The stones of Chaco Canyon may be silent, but the spirit of the community that thrived here continues to echo through time. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey into the heart of Chacoan life. If you found this exploration fascinating, please give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for more deep dives into the ancient world. Let me know in the comments what aspect of Chacoan culture you find most intriguing. Until next time, keep exploring. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we journey back in time to the 15th century to explore one of the most compelling mysteries of the American Southwest, the quiet departure of the Hohokam people from their magnificent settlements. For over 1,000 years, the Hohokam thrived, building extensive canal systems, vibrant communities, and a rich cultural world in the harsh Sonoran Desert. But by the year 1450, many of their once Busaline villages and platform mound centers were empty. What happened? This isn't a story of a sudden, dramatic collapse, but a more gradual and complex transition. Let's explore the leading ideas behind this mysterious decline. Archaeologists and historians have pieced together several theories, and the truth likely lies in a combination of them. It wasn't one single event, but a cascade of challenges that slowly made their way of life unsustainable in those specific locations. Think of it less as a collapse and more as a profound transformation and migration. The Hohokam people didn't just vanish. They adapted, moved, and their descendants are still with us today, carrying on their cultural legacy. One of the most significant factors researchers point to is environmental change. The 1300s and 1400s were a period of intense climate instability across the region. Tree-earing data and other environmental records show evidence of a prolonged and severe drought. For a society so brilliantly dependent on agriculture and water management, This would have been a monumental challenge. Imagine dedicating generations to building and maintaining hundreds of miles of irrigation canals, only to see the rivers that feed them run low, year after year. A prolonged drought doesn't just mean less water for crops. It has a ripple effect across the entire ecosystem. Native plants and animals that the Hohokam relied on for food, medicine, and materials would have become scarce. The desert, always a challenging place to live, would have become even more unforgiving. This resource stress would have put immense pressure on their communities. Less food and water would mean it was harder to support the large populations that had gathered in their major settlements. Another consequence of this prolonged drought and resource scarcity could have been soil degradation. The Hohokam irrigation system was an engineering marvel. For centuries, it allowed them to turn the desert green. However, irrigating desert land over long periods can lead to problems like waterlogging and increased salinity in the soil. As water evaporates, it leaves behind salts and minerals. Over time, this buildup can make the soil less fertile and even toxic to the very crops they depended on, like maize, beans, and squash. So you have a situation where there's less water coming from the rivers, and the land itself is becoming harder to farm. It's a powerful one-two punch from the environment. The very system that fueled their success for centuries may have, in the end, contributed to the need for change. It is a testament to how even the most ingenious human systems are ultimately subject to the forces of nature. Now, let's layer another piece under this complex puzzle. Social and political shifts. The Hohokam world wasn't a single, unified empire. It was a network of independent and semi-independent communities, connected by trade, culture, and shared beliefs. Their society was organized around large centers with platform mounds, ball courts, and great houses, which were likely hubs for ceremony, trade, and administration. As environmental pressures mounted, social tensions may have begun to rise. When resources are scarce, it can be difficult to maintain the complex social fabric that holds large communities together. The leadership structures that had managed the canal systems and organized religious ceremonies might have lost their influence. Some archaeologists see evidence of this in the archaeological record. For example, in the late period, there's a decline in the construction of large public works, like this could suggest that the collective, community-wide activities that once unified people were becoming less common. There is also some evidence of localized conflict, though it's important not to overstate this. It wasn't a period of widespread warfare, but there may have been increased friction between neighboring villages competing for dwindling resources like water and fertile land. This internal stress could have led to a breakdown of the old social order. People might have decided that the benefits of living in these large, centralized towns were no longer worth the cost. Instead of a top-down collapse, it might have been a grassroots movement, with families and small groups choosing to leave the major centers in search of a better, more sustainable way of life elsewhere. They might have moved to smaller, more dispersed settlements along different stretches of the rivers or into upland areas where different survival strategies were possible. This idea of a societal reorganization, rather than a simple collapse, is really important. It respects the agency and resilience of the Hohokam people. They weren't passive victims of climate change. They were active decision-makers who responded to changing circumstances in intelligent ways. Faced with a system that was no longer working, they chose to change. They voted with their feet, moving away from the old centers of power and creating new kinds of communities. Another intriguing theory involves changes in the wider regional network. The Hohokam were not isolated. They were part of a vast web of trade and interaction that stretched from the Pacific coast to the Great Plains and deep into Mesoamerica. They traded for beautiful seashells, vibrant macaw, feathers, pottery, and obsidian. This trade was not just about economics. It was also about exchanging ideas, maintaining alliances, and participating in a shared cultural world. Around the 14th and 15th centuries, this wider world was also in flux. Other major cultural centers in the Southwest were also experiencing their own transformations. The intricate trade routes that had connected these diverse peoples for centuries may have been disrupted. If the flow of prestige goods and important materials slowed or stopped, it could have further undermined the authority of the Hohokam leaders whose power was partially based on their ability to procure and distribute these items. The world was changing, not just in the Sonoran Desert, but all around them. So, when we put all these pieces together, a clearer picture emerges. It's not a single cause, but a convergence of factors. Imagine a perfect storm. A severe, long-term drought reduces the water supply. Centuries of irrigation make the soil less productive. These environmental stresses lead to social friction and a questioning of old traditions and leadership. At the same time, regional trade networks that supported the social structure begin to fray. Faced with this combination of challenges, the Hohokam people made a logical choice. They dispersed. They moved. They adapted. They left the large, densely populated villages and transitioned to smaller, more flexible communities. It was the end of a particular way of life. The end of the classic Hohokam cultural expression that we see in the grand ruins. But it was not the end of the people themselves. Their descendants, the Hohokam peoplesta. Tohono Hohokam and Akimel Hohokam continue to live in the region today. Their oral traditions and cultural practices hold echoes of their ancestors' incredible legacy. They see the canals and platform mounds not as ruins of a lost civilization, but as the footprints of their grandfathers and grandmothers. It's a powerful reminder that history is not just in the past. It lives on in the present. So, the story of the Hohokam decline is really a story of resilience, adaptation, and transformation. It's a deeply human story about how people respond to profound environmental and social change. It reminds us that societies are not static things, but living, breathing systems that are always evolving. The mysterious emptying of the great Hohokam towns was on so much an ending as it was the beginning of a new chapter for the ancestral peoples of the Sonoran Desert. Thank you so much for joining me on this exploration into the past. It's a fascinating subject, and there's still so much to learn. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing for more journeys into history and archaeology. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. See you next time. The Great House, once the vibrant heart of a thriving community, began its slow descent into silence. The sounds of daily life, the laughter of children, the rhythmic grinding of corn, the murmur of voices in the cool evening air, all faded away, one by one. The people who had built this monument, who had lived and loved within its walls, were gone. We don't know for certain why they left. Perhaps it was a prolonged drought that withered their crops and dried up the canals. Perhaps it was conflict, disease, or the call of a new belief system that drew them away to other lands. Whatever the reason, the departure was not a single dramatic event, but a gradual emptying, a slow exhale that left a profound void. One by one, the rooms fell quiet. The cooking fires went cold, their embers turning to gray ash. The clay pots, once filled with water and food, sat empty. Woven mats and cotton blankets were left behind, gathering dust in the corners. The doorways, which had framed countless comings and goings, now stood open to an empty plaza. The once bustling rooftop terraces, where people gathered to watch the sunset or perform ceremonies, were now visited only by the wind. The last footsteps echoed and then vanished, leaving Casa Grande to face the centuries alone. Silence settled over the structure, a silence so deep it seemed to have a weight of its own, pressing down on the empty courtyards and vacant rooms. As the human presence receded, nature began its patient reclamation. The fierce desert sun beat down on the Caliche walls, day after day, year after year. The brilliant blue sky, once a backdrop for human activity, now became the building's constant, silent companion. Sunlight streamed through the open doorways and windows, painting, shifting patterns on the earthen floors where feet no longer trod. It was a slow, quiet invasion. The light illuminated the textures of the walls, revealing the hand-smoothed surfaces and the intricate layers of construction. It warmed the floors where families had once slept, a ghostly reminder of the life that had filled these spaces. The wind, that ever-present voice of the desert, became the new occupant of Casa Grande. It whispered through the corridors, moaned through the aligned doorways, and swirled in the open-roofed rooms. It carried with it the fine desert sand, which began to accumulate in drifts against the walls, slowly softening the sharp angles and filling the spaces once occupied by people. Seeds, carried on the wind or dropped by birds, found purchase in the cracks and crevices of the walls. Small shrubs and resilient desert grasses began to sprout, their green leaves a stark contrast against the pale earth tones of the building. Their roots, tiny at first, began to probe the structure, seeking moisture and a foothold in this man-made The seasons turned, marked not by festivals and harvests, but by the subtle shifts in the desert's mood. The blistering heat of summer was followed by the dramatic monsoons. Rain, a life-giving force for the farmers, now became a relentless agent of erosion. Water cascaded down the walls, seeking the path of least resistance. It flowed over the carefully plastered surfaces, slowly wearing them away, exposing the rougher core beneath. Puddles formed on the floors of the roofless rooms, turning the packed earth back into mud. With each storm, a tiny fraction of Casa Grande was washed away, carried off by the rivulets of water, and deposited on the desert floor. The process was imperceptibly slow, a geological timescale imposed upon a human creation. Winter brought a different kind of challenge. The nights grew cold, and the moisture that had seeped into the walls would freeze and expand. This constant cycle of freezing and thawing acted like a tiny, persistent hammer, creating small fissures and widening existing cracks. It was a subtle, internal pressure, working from within to dismantle what had been so carefully built. Yet, Casa Grande endured. The sheer mass and brilliant engineering of the structure resisted the relentless assault of time and weather. The thick Caliche walls, packed and cured under the desert sun, proved incredibly durable. They had been designed to bear immense weight, and they now bore the weight of centuries of solitude. The building was touched by decay, but not defeated. It settled, it cracked, it wore down, but it did not fall. Erosion sculpted the great house into a new form. The sharp corners of the walls became rounded. The smooth plaster that had once covered the exterior flaked away, revealing the layered, almost sedimentary nature of its construction. It began to look less like a building and more like a natural landform, a butte or a mesa rising organically from the desert floor. It was a transformation, a slow return to the earth from which it was made. The sun bleached the walls to a pale bone white, and the wind scoured them clean. The openings that were once windows and doors became hollow eyes, staring out across the unchanging landscape. The building became a ruin, but a noble one. It was a skeleton, picked clean by the elements, but with its essential structure still intact, a testament to the strength of its design and the skill of its builders. For centuries, Casa Grande stood in this state of majestic decay, a silent monument in an empty land. It was a landmark for the new peoples who would eventually pass through this valley, the Hohokam, the ancestors of the very people who may have built it, who regarded it with reverence as a sacred ancestral place. Later, Spanish explorers and missionaries would see it, marveling at the scale of the structure and wondering about the lost civilization that had created it. They gave it its modern name, Casa Grande, the Great House, a simple and fitting description for what they saw. American trappers, soldiers, and pioneers followed, each leaving their own mark, some, unfortunately, in the form of graffiti carved into the ancient walls. They saw it as a curiosity, a relic of a forgotten time. Through all of this, the building remained fundamentally unchanged, a stoic observer of the passing parade of history. It had become a part of the landscape itself, as enduring and timeless as the mountains on the horizon. The silence was its story, and its slow erosion was a testament to its strength. It was a place of abandonment, but it was not a place of failure. It was a powerful symbol of permanence in a world of constant change, waiting patiently for its story to be read. Welcome back to our journey through time. Today, we're diving into Chapter 17, the arrival of Spanish explorers. Imagine this. It's the late 1600s, a time of ambitious exploration and discovery. Spanish expeditions are pushing north from Mexico into the vast, unknown lands of what is now the American Southwest. And it's here, in the heart of the Sonoran Desert, that they stumble upon something truly astonishing. Picture a group of weary explorers, their eyes scanning the horizon, when suddenly, a massive, multi-story structure rises from the desert floor. It's unlike anything they've seen in this region. This wasn't a simple village of huts. This was a monumental piece of architecture, standing silent and empty under the harsh sun. The local Hohokam people they encountered had stories and traditions about this place, but the builders themselves were long gone. The structure had been deserted for centuries. The first documented European to see this incredible sight was Father Eusebio Francisco, a Jesuit, missionary, explorer, and cartographer. In November of 1694, during his travels through the Pimeria Alta, he arrived at the ruins. He was completely awestruck. In his journals, he meticulously described what he saw. A roof, a four-story building, as large as a castle and equal to the largest church in these lands of Sonora. He noted its thick adobe walls, the smooth plaster that still clung to some surfaces, and the impressive symmetry of its design. He was fascinated by the precision of its construction, pondering the tools and techniques used by its mysterious builders. It was Father Quino and his Spanish companions who gave the structure the name it still holds today, Casa Grande, which simply means the Great House in Spanish. The name perfectly captures the sense of wonder and scale that the building commanded. It was a landmark, a beacon in the desert that immediately signaled a sophisticated and powerful society had once thrived there. His accounts were the first to bring news of this ancient wonder to the European world, sparking curiosity and speculation that would last for centuries. Following Quino, other Spanish military and religious figures would visit the site throughout the 1700s. Captain Juan Mateo Manque, who accompanied Quino on several expeditions, also left detailed records. He measured the dimensions of the rooms and the thickness of the walls, providing some of the earliest architectural data we have. He described the surrounding compound, noting the remnants of other buildings in a large enclosing wall, all part of a much larger settlement that had long since crumbled back into the earth. Another key visitor was Father Jacobus, who came through the area in the mid-1740s. His writings confirmed much of what Quino and Mange had reported, but by Settlemer's time, the effects of time and weather were becoming more apparent. He noted the decay and erosion that were slowly eating away at the great structure. These early Spanish accounts are absolutely invaluable to us today. They provide a snapshot of Casa Grande before modern tourism and before the worst of its deterioration. They are our earliest written window into this magnificent ruin, seen through the eyes of men who were the first outsiders to lay eyes on it in centuries. These explorers and missionaries were trying to make sense of what they saw. They speculated about who could have built such a place. Some believed it was the work of the Aztecs, perhaps a stopping point on their mythical migration south to the Valley of Mexico. This theory, known as the Aztec migration theory, was popular for a long time. The Spanish called the ruins the Casa de Montezuma, linking it to the famous Aztec emperor. They were trying to fit this mysterious puzzle piece into the history they already knew. While we now know the Hohokam people were the true builders, these early theories show just how profoundly the Casa Grande captured the imagination of its first European visitors. Their journals weren't just dry reports. They were filled with a sense of awe. They wrote about the panoramic views from the upper stories, stretching across the vast Tila River Valley. They tried to decipher the purpose of the various rooms and the strange astronomical alignments they seemed to possess. They were, in essence, the very first archaeologists at the site. Even if they didn't have that title, their observations, their measurements, and even their misguided theories laid the groundwork for all future study. These Spanish accounts paint a picture of a silent, majestic sentinel in the desert. The Casa Grande wasn't a living city when they found it. It was already an ancient relic. Its rooms were empty, its plazas were quiet, and the only inhabitants were the desert creatures that had taken up residence. This sense of profound emptiness, of a great civilization vanished, is a theme that runs through all their writings. They were confronted with a powerful reminder that even the mightiest societies can fade, leaving behind only echoes and ruins. The legacy of these early Spanish visitors is twofold. First, they gave the site its name and put it on the map of the known world. Without their written records, our understanding of the site's condition in the 17th and 18th centuries would be a complete blank. We wouldn't know how much has been lost to time. Second, they began the long tradition of inquiry and fascination with Casa Grande. They asked the same fundamental questions we ask today. Who built this? Why did they build it here? And where did they go? The stories they sent back to Mexico and Spain were the first to broadcast the existence of a sophisticated pre-Columbian civilization in the heart of North America, one that was capable of incredible engineering and architectural feats. They established Casa Grande not just as a ruin, but as a profound historical mystery. It's a mystery that continues to captivate us, driving archaeologists and historians to continue digging, analyzing, and piecing together the story of the people who called this great house their home. Join us next time as we explore the 19th century, when American pioneers and scholars begin to rediscover Casa Grande, leading to the first efforts to study and protect this irreplaceable piece of history. Thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this deep dive, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter. See you then. Welcome back to our channel. Today, we read Journeying Back in Time to explore the fascinating story of archaeology and preservation in the American Southwest, centered around a truly monumental site. Let's dive into Chapter 18. Archaeology and Preservation. Our story begins in the late 1800s. Imagine a time before federal protections, when ancient sites were vulnerable to the elements and human impact. Archaeologists and concerned citizens started to realize that these irreplaceable windows into the past were disappearing. One of the most prominent sites drawing attention was the Casa Grande, or Great House, an ancient structure built by the ancestral Sonoran Desert people in what is now Arizona. In the 1880s, folks in Arizona began petitioning the U.S. government to do something to protect this magnificent earthen building. One of the key figures was Frank Hamilton Cushing, a pioneering ethnologist. He was sent to the area and immediately recognized the immense historical value of Casa Grande. He documented the site, conducted some of the earliest scientific excavations there, and became a vocal advocate for its preservation. His work, along with that of others like Cosmas Mindeleff and Jesse Walter Fuchs, laid the groundwork for American archaeology in the Southwest. They weren't just digging for artifacts. They were trying to piece together the story of the people who lived there centuries ago. Their detailed maps, notes, and photographs are invaluable records that we still study today. Their advocacy paid off. In 1892, something historic happened. President Benjamin Harrison, using the authority of a law intended for other purposes, designated a square mile of land around the Great House as the Casa Grande Ruin Reservation. This was a landmark moment. It effectively made Casa Grande the very first prehistoric and cultural site to be protected by the United States government. Think about that. It was the nation's first archaeological preserve, a precursor to the national parks and monuments we know and love today. This act signaled a major shift in national consciousness, a growing recognition that America's story didn't begin in 1776, but stretched back for millennia. But setting aside the land was only the first step. The Great House itself, made of a unique type of desert soil called caliche, was still exposed to the harsh desert sun and the occasional torrential downpour. For years, people debated the best way to protect it. Should they repair the walls? Plaster them? Put a roof back on? These were difficult questions, without easy answers. Repairing it with modern materials could damage the original structure, and they didn't know for sure what the original roof looked like. Finally, a decision was made. Instead of altering the ancient building, they would shield it. In 1903, a massive wooden canopy was constructed over the Great House. This wasn't just any roof. It was a huge, four-legged structure designed by a Los Angeles architect named U.S.G. Ryle. It stood on concrete piers and was covered with corrugated iron. This shelter was one of the very first large-scale efforts in the United States to preserve an archaeological site in place, or in situ, as the experts say. It was a novel idea at the time, a testament to the growing preservation ethic. The goal was to stop the erosion and decay without fundamentally changing the ancient ruin itself. This 1903 canopy did its job for nearly 3 decades. But the desert is a tough environment. The wood began to deteriorate, and it was clear that a more permanent solution was needed. So, in 1932, a new, even larger steel canopy was built to replace the old wooden one. This is the iconic shelter you see standing over the Great House today. It was an engineering marvel for its time, designed to protect the ruin from sun and rain while allowing for air circulation to prevent moisture buildup. The construction of this new roof marked another milestone in the history of preservation technology. The work of archaeologists at Casa Grande continued and evolved. Early on, the focus was on excavation and stabilization, clearing debris, strengthening weak walls, and learning as much as possible before the evidence disappeared. Jesse Walter Fuchs, who followed Cushing, conducted extensive excavations in the early 1900s, uncovering more of the surrounding village and learning about the community that supported the Great House. He was also instrumental in getting the site declared a national monument in 1918 by President Woodrow Wilson, giving it an even greater level of protection and recognition. As the 20th century progressed, archaeological methods became more refined. Scientists moved from large-scale digging to more careful, systematic investigations. They began using new techniques to analyze pottery, study plant and animal remains, and understand the ancient environment. The focus shifted from just finding objects to understanding the lives of the people. How did they farm in the desert? What did they eat? What were their social structures and beliefs? Casa Grande became a living laboratory for generations of archaeologists. Today, the work continues. Modern archaeologists use non-invasive technologies like ground-penetrating radar to explore what lies beneath the surface without even digging. They study the oral histories of descendant communities, like the Hohokam, who see Casa Grande as a sacred ancestral site. This collaborative approach, combining science with cultural knowledge, gives us a much richer and more complete picture of the past. The story of Casa Grande is not just about ancient ruins. It is about an evolving relationship with the past, and our ongoing commitment to preserve these fragile links to our shared human history. From the first petitions in the 1880s to the high-tech preservation efforts of today, Casa Grande stands as a symbol of our nation's journey in understanding and protecting its deep and diverse heritage. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into the past as fascinating as I did, be sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next chapter. See you next time. Welcome, everyone. In T-Series, we've explored the deep history etched into the landscapes of the Southwest. We've marveled at the ancient structures and imagined the lives of the people who built them. But this story isn't just about the past. It's a living, breathing story that continues today. The descendants of the ancestral Sonoran Desert people, often referred to as the Hohokam, are still here. Their cultures, traditions, and languages thrive. Today, we're honored to explore the modern indigenous connections to these ancestral lands, specifically focusing on the Hohokam peoples and their profound relationship with the area we now know as Casa Grande Ruins National Monument. When we talk about places like Casa Grande, it's crucial to understand that for many, this is not just an archaeological site, it is a sacred, ancestral homeland. The people who built and lived in these communities are the direct ancestors of today's SOA. This connection isn't a historical footnote. It's a core part of their identity. The modern Hohokam are comprised of 4 federally recognized tribes in the United States: the Gila River Indian Community, the Salt River Pima-Maricopa Indian Community, the Octin Indian Community, and the Tohono O'odham Nation. Additionally, there are related Hohokam communities in northern Sonora, Mexico. For all of them, this land tells the story of their origins. So, how is this connection maintained and expressed today? It's woven into the very fabric of their culture. It's in their oral traditions, their songs, their ceremonies, and their language. The Hohokam language itself contains words and concepts that describe the landscape, the plants, and the animals of this specific region, reflecting a relationship that has been nurtured over countless generations. Elders pass down stories of their ancestors, which means those who have gone are all used up. These stories aren't myths. They are historical and moral accounts that explained how to live, how the world was created, and their place within it. Many of these narratives are directly tied to specific locations within the broader Casa Grande region. A particular mountain, a bend in the river, or the ruins of an ancient village. These are all characters in their ongoing cultural story. For instance, the Gila River, which flows near the Casa Grande, is central to Hohokam cosmology and history. Their ancestors were master farmers who engineered vast canal systems to bring water from the Gila and Salt rivers to their fields. This ingenuity is a source of immense pride. The knowledge of water management, desert agriculture, and sustainable living passed down from the Hohokam is still relevant and respected today. In the Gila River Indian community, for example, there's a strong movement to revitalize traditional farming practices, growing native crops that their ancestors cultivated for centuries. This isn't just about food, it's about reconnecting with the land and the wisdom of those who came before. The Casa Grande structure itself, the Great House, holds a special significance. It's known in the Hohokam language as Sivanvaki, which translates to Great House or Chief's House. Oral traditions describe it as a ceremonial center, a place of gathering, and perhaps even an astronomical observatory. Its purpose is still a subject of discussion among archaeologists. Before the Hohokam, its sacred nature is undisputed. It is a powerful, physical reminder of their ancestors' achievements and spiritual life. Visiting the site is, for many Hohokam, a pilgrimage, a way to connect with their heritage and to honor their ancestors. They see not just ruins, but the home of their relatives. This continuity is also evident in their art. The intricate patterns found on ancient Hohokam pottery are echoed in the designs of modern Oad basket weavers. The iconic basketry of the Tohono O'odham, for example, often features geometric designs and symbols that have been part of their artistic vocabulary for thousands of years. These are not just beautiful objects. They are story-laden heirlooms that carry cultural knowledge through generations. The materials themselves, like yucca, bear grass, and devil's claw, are gathered from the same desert environment that sustained their ancestors. The act of gathering and weaving is a continuation of a sacred practice. Fur termor. The Hohokam peoples are actively involved in the preservation and interpretation of their ancestral sites, including Casa Grande Ruins National Monument. They work in partnership with the National Park Service and other institutions, sharing their traditional knowledge to provide a more complete and respectful understanding of these places. This collaboration is vital. It ensures that the story being told is not just an archaeological one, but a human one, infused with the perspective of the descendants. Hohokam cultural advisors help guide research, develop educational programs, and participate in consultations about the management of these sacred lands. This active stewardship demonstrates that their connection is not passive or historical, but a living responsibility. When you listen to an Hohokam elder speak about these lands, you hear a perspective that transcends time. They don't speak of the Hohokam as a separate, extinct people. They speak of our ancestors. They see the pottery shards on the ground, not as artifacts, but as pieces of a grandmother's broken pot. They feel a kinship with the people who left their handprints in the plaster of these ancient walls. This perspective is powerful because it collapses the distance between past and present. It reminds us that history is not a closed book. The descendants of the people who built Sivanvaki are here. Their communities are vibrant, and their connection to this homeland is unbreakable. This living cultural continuity challenges the old narrative of vanished peoples. The builders of Casa Grande did not disappear. They adopted. They persevered, and they evolved into the modern Hohokam communities we know today. Their journey has faced immense challenges, including the loss of land, the disruption of their water sources, and pressures to assimilate. Yet, their core identity, rooted in this desert landscape, has endured. Their resilience is a testament to the strength of their culture and the depth of their connection to their ancestral homeland. So, as we reflect on the marvels of Casa Grande, let's also acknowledge and honor the living descendants. Let's appreciate that this is not just a monument to a lost civilization, but a sacred site for a thriving one. The story of the ancestral Sonoran Desert people is not over. It's being written every day in the Hohokam communities in their language. Their songs, their art, and their unwavering dedication to caring for the land that has always been their home. By understanding this, we move beyond being simple tourists and become more respectful visitors, appreciating the full, rich, and continuous story of this incredible place. Thank you for joining me on this journey to understand the deep and enduring connections between the Hohokam people and their ancestral lands. It's a story of resilience, identity, and the timeless bond between a people and their home. If you found this perspective valuable, please like, share, and subscribe for more chapters in our exploration of history. See you next time. We return now to the quiet desert. Here, under the vast, silent sky of Arizona, stands the Casa Grande. The sun beats down, casting the long, sharp shadow of its protective canopy across the desert floor. The air is still, save for the whisper of a breeze that has traveled across these lands for centuries. Standing before this monument, you can't help but feel a profound sense of peace, a connection to a time long past. The walls, a warm, rust-colored caliche, rise from the earth as if they grew here naturally. They glow in the afternoon light. Their surface is a testament to the hands that mixed and molded this soil into a home, a landmark, a mystery. Each layer tells a story of patience, of a community working together under this same sun. You can almost feel the presence of the Hohokam people, their echoes lingering in the cool shade of the great house. This isn't just a ruin, it's a monument to human determination. Imagine the scene nearly 1,000 years ago. There were no power tools, no advanced machinery, just human hands, ingenuity, and a deep understanding of their environment. They carried water, mixed the earth, and painstakingly built these walls, layer by layer, letting each one dry before adding the next. It was a slow, deliberate process, a testament to their incredible patience and foresight. They aligned their creation with the cosmos, building not just a structure, but a calendar and a celestial observatory. As you walk around the great house, you notice the details, the small, carefully placed openings in the walls that align perfectly with the sun and moon at specific times of the year. The summer solstice sunbeam that shines through a high western-facing hole to illuminate a specific spot on the eastern wall. The lunar standstill alignments that occur only every 18.6 years. This wasn't accidental. This was advanced astronomy, engineering, and mathematics woven into the very fabric of their home. They were watching the sky, tracking the seasons, and using that knowledge to guide their lives, their farming, and their ceremonies. What drove them to build such a massive, complex structure? We can only speculate. Perhaps it was a center for trade, a gathering place for clans from across the region. The Gila River, once flowing nearby, would have made this a fertile and strategic location. The intricate network of canals they dug, some of the most sophisticated in ancient North America, turned this arid landscape into a thriving agricultural heartland. They were master engineers, hydrologists who understood the flow of water and the lay of the land with a precision that still baffles modern experts. The Casa Grande might have been the administrative heart of this vast system, a symbol of their power and prosperity. Or maybe it was something more, a spiritual center, a place of ceremony and reverence. Standing here, it's easy to imagine rituals tied to the cycles of the sun and moon, celebrations of harvest, and gatherings that strengthened the bonds of their community. The sheer scale of the building suggests it held immense importance, a place that was meant to endure, to stand as a beacon in the desert. The Hohokam didn't leave behind a written language, so the structure itself is their text, their story written in earth and sky. The silence of the desert today is a stark contrast to the bustling life that once filled this space. The laughter of children, the murmur of conversations, the sounds of pottery being made and corn being ground. For over 1,000 years, the Hohokam culture flourished here. And then, around 1450, they vanished. Not overnight, but gradually. The great house was abandoned, and the people dispersed. The reasons are still debated by archaeologists. Was it a prolonged drought? Did the soil become too saline from centuries of irrigation? Was it conflict, or a shift in social and religious beliefs? This mystery only adds to the aura of the Casa Grande. It reminds us that even the most advanced and resilient societies are subject to the forces of nature and the currents of history. The Hohokam didn't so much disappear as they transformed, their descendants likely becoming part of the Hohokam and Pueblo peoples of today. Their legacy isn't lost. It's woven into the cultural fabric of the Southwest. As the sun begins to set, the walls of the Casa Grande deepen in color, from ochre to a fiery red. The shadows stretch even longer, and the silence becomes more profound. You feel a sense of humility standing before a structure built with such ancient knowledge and enduring purpose. The Hohokam faced challenges we can only imagine, yet they created something of incredible beauty and complexity. They looked to the stars for guidance and found a way to thrive in a harsh environment, not by conquering it, but by living in harmony with it. Their ingenuity continues to inspire us. In a world of rapid change and technological marvels, the Casa Grande reminds us of the power of patience, community, and a deep connection to the natural world. It stands as a quiet but powerful testament to what we can achieve with simple tools and a shared vision. It's a legacy of resilience, A story of people who read the earth and the sky and built a home that has fascinated and inspired generations. Leaving this place, you carry a piece of its tranquility with you. The image of the rust-colored walls against the blue sky, the feeling of the dry desert air, and the quiet wonder of a civilization that left behind such an elegant and enduring puzzle. The Casa Grande is more than just an ancient building. It is a timeless lesson in human spirit and a symbol of the enduring legacy of the ancestral Sonoran Desert people. Their world may have faded, but their ingenuity, their determination, and their spirit are still very much alive, right here, in the heart of the quiet desert. Thank you for joining us on this journey. If you found this story as inspiring as we do, please like, share, and subscribe for more explorations into the incredible history that surrounds us. See you next time.